Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us. While we are waiting a couple of minutes before we start so that everyone can enter the room, let me just say that this is the first webinar we're making at DatoCMS. So we decided to make sure we'll be on schedule to pre-record everything, but hopefully there will be other webinars in the future. So let us know in the comments if you actually like this format or you'd rather have something more interactive next time. Also, if you would like to be the next speaker and maybe share some of your experience with DatoCMS with everyone else, let us know. It would be very interesting for us. Okay, so the speaker for today's event will be Joe Yates, CTO of Lean Panda. And Lean Panda is a web agency that specializes in Jamstack that actually helped bootstrap DatoCMS almost 6 years ago, so I'm very happy they're here with us today. They're also working on a new exciting project, which is a static website generator written in Elixir called Fermo, whose most interesting feature is to take full advantage of multi-core processor to dramatically reduce build times. So if any of this is interesting for you, make sure to start the repo on GitHub and also follow them on Twitter. Okay, so this webinar will all be about structured text. Structured text is a feature that we really care about. We're incredibly excited about it because we think it's a very big step forward for DatoCMS itself. Basically, as you'll see in the webinar, of course, a structured text is a complete solution to allow you to write rich text content for the modern web. It offers an extremely convenient editor for content writers to write their content, obviously, but it also allows you to hyperlink not just URLs of your pages, but also to hyperlink records inside your DatoCMS project. It also allows you to embed inside the content completely custom blocks, which can represent anything you want, really. So call to actions, galleries, videos. And to allow all of this, structured text saves its content in a particular format that we call dest, which is nothing but a well-structured JSON, which represents a tree of nodes. Joe will give you all the relevant details, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. So enjoy the presentation, and remember that for the whole event, we'll be all hanging in the YouTube chat. So don't hesitate to ask questions because they're more than welcome.
Hi, my name's Joe Yates from Lean Panda, and today I'll be talking about DatoCMS's new structured text field type. The type is fully documented online. The links will be in the notes. Also, we will be using the open source JavaScript libraries for structured text, which are available on NPM, and we'll be using the React structured text component, and that link will be in the notes as well. So, what we will be doing is using a little mini app that I've created, which is based on a DatoCMS project which I created. And what I've done is I've created two models. The central model is the article. It's got a title, a slug based on the title, and then a structured text field. We'll go into the details later. And so also I've created another model called an item, just so that we can see how you create links between things in structured text. And in terms of actual content, I've created these 7 example articles, and then, as I said, a single item so that we can have a look at linking. And we will be querying this project with GraphQL, so we'll be using the GraphIQL builder here. Also, the project which I'll be using is available on GitHub, and the link to that will be in the notes as well. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to have an index of the examples, which is here. So let's just do the first GraphQL query. It's got nothing to do with structured text specifically, but just to get that first query done. So let's go into the GraphQL interface, and we want all articles, basically. But it would be good to have them in the correct order, and let's have them ordered by title, because as I didn't show you earlier, they've all got prefixes, so if they're ordered by title, they'll come out nicely ordered. Okay, so that's not enough. We also need to have some info to show, so we want to be able to link to our articles, and we want to show the title. So ID, slug, and title. And there it is. Okay, so this is our query, and we're going to put this in the project, example project. Here we are using Next.js, so there's Next, React, and then there is the React DatoCMS library, which I mentioned earlier here. And then there's a GraphQL client. Okay, so this is the page for articles, and it's calling a method called allArticles, which is implemented over here in the API. And here we are, exactly the same query we just saw. And so that is called down here, goes and grabs the articles, passes them back. Okay, so giving us this result. Right, now let's go and look at the first query, which has got something to do with structured text. So here is the first example, and I've got my structured text field here empty. So if we just type something, okay, so I'm not using any of the functionality which is special to structured text. You can call up the various block level elements like this and so on, but let's just start with a very, very simple example. Okay, so let's make a brand new query, and I want to grab an article. And because the way this works, we will be calling up articles by slug, because these links link through to a single article by its slug. So we want to be able to filter by the slug, and we want the slug to be the value we got here. Okay, so let's just grab that and put that in here. Okay, and we want almost all of the information, so the ID, the slug, the title, and this time we want the structured text field, the body. Now let's see what happens if we run the query just like this. Okay, so we've got an error, and so field must have selections, so we need to actually add something inside body. So let's just click on value here and add that, and let's see if that works without error. Okay, so that's given us a result, and as you can see, the result is much longer than the query, and let's see why. So okay, ID, slug, and title, very simple, but then the body field gives us a lot of information. Okay, so the value is the thing which we were actually querying, and that is a hierarchical structure which is called a DAST, which is a data abstract syntax tree, which contains a document, and inside that the children are a list of blocks, and in this case we've just got a paragraph which has a span of text. Okay, now if we look at what actually we do with that. So this is in my test project. So I just go and grab my article by slug from my API, which is over here. So the query is a bit more complicated here because we are adding other stuff later, but we just call up our article, and we just pass it to the structured text component from the React DatoCMS library. And again, here there's some other detail which we'll be looking at later, but the bit we're interested in at the moment is the fact that we just say data is the article body, and the structured text component does all the rest. So if we just click on that, there we are with the result which is coming through live from Dato. Okay, so now let's go on to something which actually shows more of what structured text is capable of. So in the second example, we've got some styling. So this word is marked as bold, we've got highlight, italic, and so on. There's a single word which is actually styled in two ways. It's got strike through and bold, and we'll see how the structured text query in GraphQL responds with a result which indicates how that styling is to be applied. Okay, so here we're back on the same query, but we need to get this new slug. So let's take that and put it in here and run that. Okay, so now we've got a much longer result again. We've got exactly the same situation as before. Slug, title, body, containing the value, and it's basically the same stuff at the top of the tree, but inside the paragraph we have a number of spans. So each part of styled text is marked by including it in a span and indicating what type of styling there is. So the first word which we saw was marked as bold has this strong mark. So every span has an array of marks when it needs to be styled. This space doesn't have any styling, so no marks array, highlighted word, and so on and so forth. As we said, there is one word which has two types of styling, which is the word words, and it has bold basically and strike through. Okay, so as I said, the query is the same. We don't need to change anything on that front, and we just pass the same thing through to structured text. And here it goes. Okay, and the structured text component gives us back this. So exactly as we're seeing it on DatoCMS. Now, all of this is transformed into HTML in a perfectly standard way. There is the possibility of overriding these styling methods, so you could decide to apply a class instead of just applying the standard HTML tags. These just have a strong tag around some and a mark tag around styled. Okay, so next up is links, standard hyperlinks. So here we got some text. Let's say that we want to put a hyperlink on the word linked, and we want to link to a URL. So something like this. Let's save that. Again, the query doesn't change. We just need to grab the slug. Let's put it in here, see if that's any faster, and run that. Oop, because I got the slug wrong, I'm not getting any result. Okay, so there's our result. So we have a paragraph split into three sections. The first word is A, then there is the word linked, and then there is word, or space word, and a full stop. The bit we're interested in is here. And so this is a link, there's the URL it points to, which contains a span with the linked text. Again, nothing needs to be changed on the code side, and if we go and see how that comes out, exactly as expected, we get this text with a standard hyperlink to the destination URL. Okay, so for the next example, instead of just using URLs for hyperlinks, we want to be able to create a link within our DatoCMS project. So here we select some text and say that instead of linking to a URL, we want to link to another record within this project. So let's choose item and save that. And here the editor is just showing something which looks like a standard link, but if we hover over it, we can see that it actually has a different UI, and it's indicating that we're linking to a record. And if we click on that, we can also go through and edit it. Okay, let's save that, grab the slug, put it in and see what we get. Okay, so this output is pretty similar to before. We have dast with a paragraph split into 3 parts, the 2 parts which aren't linked and then the linked part here. Now, so what it's saying is that this isn't a link, it's an item link, and that's the ID of the record that it's pointing to, and of course this is the linked text. The thing is that we don't have any information about that target item, so we need to query for it. So let's go back into GraphIQL and select links. Now we want to have data about links to item records, so let's choose that, and let's say that we want to build a link using the slug. So let's put that in there and let's have the title so that we can include that if necessary. Excuse me. Okay, so apart from the information which we just saw, right down here at the bottom, at the same level as the value, as you can see from the query here, same level as the value, we have an array of links. And so the only linked item that we're getting is this one here. So there we are, we have the information about the link that we wanted. The slug is the most important bit. Okay, so we've got this slightly updated query, which, as we saw earlier, is included in the repo. The thing that's missing is that we need to be able to tell the rendering code what type of item we are dealing with, because if you look at this, there's nothing to say that this is an item record. We've got an ID up here, and then we've just got the data we've chosen. So what we need to do is we need to add in here the type name. So the type name will tell us that this link that we've got here is an item record, and that will allow us to have differential types of rendering for items and articles. And while we're at it, let's just add in articles as well, because maybe editors will want to have a link to an article record. So let's put in the slug and the title. I'm not going to include the body here because this is a query which just goes and grabs stuff to make up a link. So I don't think that I'll need the whole structured text inside a query which just needs data to create a link. Okay, and that doesn't change the output, adding the articles. Okay, so as we saw earlier, this section here is the part that we're talking about, which grabs the links data. Now, the fact is that there's no standard way of rendering this link. It's a choice of the single application. And also, what is the URL of this item? we know that the item has a slug, which we can go and quickly see here, the item title, but we need to build the whole slug. So that is why we need to have to implement some custom rendering functions. So here I've got render link to record. Now what happens is when structured text is running through the DAST, when it finds an item link, it's required, you have to implement this if you have results which have item links. It goes and looks for a prop which is render link to record, and here's the function, and the function takes one parameter which is an object containing the record itself and any children it might have. Now, the code I've got here only handles rendering item records. It goes and looks at the type name. If it's an item record, it renders this. Otherwise, it just renders nothing. Of course, in a full application, we would need to handle article records here. Okay, so I'm just using the Next.js linked component. Here, I'm building the path, as I said. Dato cannot know that that is the path to an item record. So I build that in my custom function. And as a linked text, I just go and grab the first child. So I'm grabbing this text here and put it in as the content of the link. Okay, so let's see how that gets rendered. And there we are. And as you see down at the bottom, you should be able to see down at the bottom, the URL points to items, the item title. Okay, so next up, we've got the different types of block structures that you can have in a structured text. So here we are with a numbered list. Here's a bulleted list. Then there's a quote, a main title, and a secondary title. Now you can edit all this stuff by hitting / and you can select the type of block that you want. Now this rendering again is DatoCMS's way of rendering this stuff. You could choose a completely different style here. It depends on your styling of your site or whatever type of output you want. Okay, so let's grab the slug. It looks like it needs saving. Let's put that in here and run the query. Okay, so we had the first thing that we had in our record was a numbered list. Okay, so here we are. So we have a child, which continues down to here, which is a list of type numbered, and then we have a series of list items. The first one contains the word first, the second one contains the word second, nothing surprising there. Then we have a bulleted list, very similar, point 1, point 2 are spans, each being a list item. The only difference between this and the other, is, of course, is the type, the style. So that one is a bulleted list. Then we had our quote. So we've got block quote. The text of the quote is this, and then you have an attribute which is attribution, to say who said the quote. Then we had two different types of headers, and then there's a bit of extra stuff at the end which is just come out as a blank span. Okay, so here we don't actually have to change any of our code, because we're going to use DatoCMS's standard way of rendering this. So let's see how that comes out. Okay, so obviously the numbered list and the bulleted list, we haven't got any particular styling on this quotation, so it would need to be styled in some way, and then we have two different headers. But all of this HTML is built for us by the structured text component. Okay, so the sixth thing that we're going to look at is inline records. So maybe your editor at this point wants to put in the actual content of another record somewhere from this project. So we hit / and we say that we want to include an inline article. And let's choose the first one. Okay, so what we're saying here is that somehow at this point, in whatever output we have, we're doing HTML, we're going to render this article, not a link to the article, we're actually going to render the article in some way. Okay, so let's grab the slug and see what the query comes out like. Okay. All right, so here we have the paragraph, and it says the first article is, and then inline item. And down the bottom, here's the actual data of the inline item. So we haven't had to change the query at all. We're relying on this part of the query here. So what we do need to do is decide how to render that. So again, earlier we saw render link to record, and we had to implement that. We've also had to render inline record. And again, I've only implemented it for the type that I'm dealing with here. I probably need to implement rendering item records as well. But anyway, the way I've decided to render article records inline is to wrap the title in a strong tag. That's all. Okay, and let's see how that comes out. There we are. So the first article is, and then I've grabbed the title of the inline article and put its title there in bold. Okay, for the next type, we actually need to see how I've set up the article model. So let's go through to the settings here. And here we've got article and its structured text field. So first, let's go and have a look at something which we've been using, but I didn't show you how I set it up. So what I've said is that you can link to items and articles from this structured text field. Now, this means that an editor can choose what type of linking or inlining they want to make. Obviously, the rendering needs to match this. So if I say that I can have an article inlined or linked, I need to have some kind of rendering code for that record type. Otherwise, I won't be able to have proper output. The other thing is that I've created a custom block type, which I've called my article block, and this block type contains a title and an image. So editors can choose to have that block type any number of times within the structured text field. So as I said, there's a title and then an image asset. Okay, so let's have a look at the example I've created for that. And it's the custom blocks one here at the bottom. Okay, so my structured text field contains just an instance of this this record type, which is my article block. Here's the title, and then there's an image. Note the name of the block has capitals, my article block. We'll see how that comes out in GraphQL in a second. So let's put the query in here and run that. Okay, so that gives us a very short result. It says that we need to do something with the block which has item ID like this, but we don't have the information about it. So we have to add some more stuff to our query. And that means that we need to have to handle blocks. Now I've got the query here just to paste in, but let's see what that says. Okay, so we want, as before, we want to know the type name of what we're handling. So with every block we can find out what its type name is and then have differential rendering on the different types. So on my article block we want to grab the title and basically the image URL. Notice the type name, which has only the first letter of the block type caps, and then the word record has capitals, as with other types. So there's a change in capitalization there. Okay, so let's see if that gets us the data we want. Okay, here down at the bottom we have a block with this type name. We've got the title, the image, and its URL. Great. Okay, so with this we do need specific rendering code. So we've said that when we want to render a block in our project, we call this function render block, and if it is of type myArticleBlockRecord, then we create a div with a title and a paragraph containing the image with the URL set here. Okay, so let's see how that comes out. And there we are. We have our block, the title, and the image. Okay, so the full query in the end is this. It's quite long, but this will be the only query that I need for handling all of the cases for different types of articles. Whatever content that editors might want, all of the content that I need to grab for the structured text field will be here. Okay, so that concludes this run through of the different types of things that you need to do to query a structured text field and render it. The links to this repo and all the documentation are in the notes.